Welcome to Living Free in Tennessee, where we talk about building the life you choose on your terms. Today is Friday, August 2nd, 2024. You know, I said 2022 like a week ago. That was pretty funny. This is episode 936 of Living Free in Tennessee, and it's a Homestead happening show. So we're looking forward to keeping you guys all updated on the last week on the Homestead. And we've had a lot of stuff going on. Tactical though, first, before I jump into like the summary of what we're doing, like, what do you think of the seating arrangement today?
Is it different?
Yeah, you're not like right next to me. He didn't even notice. I have a different camera up today, so been playing with getting the studio set up a little bit differently since we did the Learn from Legends webinar series last week. I'm using an actual camera, so that's fun, but I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Tom and Pack Rat, welcome to the live stream. So today we're going to talk about a mystery explosion that happened last night, late night canning adventures, my favorite thing, injuries, erosion control on the homestead, and whatever else comes to mind. We're going to continue with the new format that we did last week. Rather than going through every category every time, we go through them, pull out key points, and if a category is not relevant, you don't see it, so then we don't have to be like, hey, there's nothing to report here, right? V for Vendetta, welcome to the live stream. Guys in the live stream, if there's something you want to know more about, it doesn't have to be on what we're talking about, like homesteading or anything. Oh boy, I have a cable problem. Did you wiggle something?
I didn't touch nothing.
Okay. Anyway, if you have a question, put the word question or comment in all caps and then write your question or comment. That way I can see it, especially today. That's important because my monitor is here and it's big. But y'all's comments are there and it's on my little screen, and I will figure out how to change that so that I can see better. But today is not the day. Before we jump into today's show, though, I want to talk about our featured event. Our featured event is a Save Your Date announcement. I have somebody coming in on August 22nd to talk about wild foraging, and we're going to change cameras.
Yeah, it's totally coming through on the live stream too.
Okay, let me reorient this so we're both on here. That's fine. Isn't it great how I can just do that right away? I think the issue is that camera got left on for 2 days.
Okay.
Because I forgot to turn it off. Anyway, let's go back. The featured event is a save the date on August 22nd at 12:30 p.m. We have a member webinar with Sherry, who's going to talk to us about better than Walmart, foraging for health. And when I talked to her about doing this webinar, it's to replace the wild foraging webinar we were going to do last month. She said, do you want wild edibles or more like wild medicine? And I said, yeah. So she's going to go through some basics. There's only so much you can cover, of course, on an hour episode, but I'm super excited to dive in. And then she's an herbalist who works out of Cookeville. Cookeville's close to here. So I'm going to have to go like hang out with her and get to know all about what she's doing. So that's August 22nd at 12:30. I will have registration links up for that by the end of the day Sunday, but they are not going to be up before the end of the day Sunday because I have some other things on the agenda between now and then. I also want to thank our 2 sponsors of today's show. The first sponsor is Discount Mylar Bags. Discount Mylar Bags is a local Tennessee company where the owner is passionate about sourcing things in bulk and passing on the savings to you. But he's also really put a lot of thought into what size bags and all of those, and like how to store food if you're going to need it in a way that makes sense, like sizes that make sense, all of that, materials that make sense. And you can find, he's just put together some articles over there at discountmylarbags.com, all of his thoughts on that. And it's a free resource, especially if you're starting to increase the cushion in your pantry, which you should definitely do if you can't live off your pantry for a year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Our second sponsor of today's show is Agris Tax Advice. Agris Tax Advice, Matthew Sursley just did a really cool webinar about investing in real estate. And it was a little different than some of his other webinars where he's like, here are tax write-offs you can do. He was just talking about, I believe, how you create it for wealth, like how to keep the wealth in something like a 1031 exchange, which if you don't know what that means, that's okay. But that was this week, and the replay is available for that. I just got the link from him like this instant, so I'm going to put it in the comments, but the replay is available for a while. Definitely check that one out. I know I'm going to. I was not on it live, but I totally plan to go check it out. Also, if you're interested in more about Agorist tax advice, go to agoristaxadvice.com. And with that, we're going to go into our first discussion of today's show. And the fun thing about these show notes is like he told me what he wants to talk about. He has no idea what I want to talk about. So we're going to talk about the infamous sheet metal cut that happened this week. Now hold up both your hands. Yeah, you see there's no cuts on his hands. There's probably cuts on his hands, but there's no major cuts on his hand. Nope. Nighthawk came down this week and he's like, hey, do you have nail clippers? And I was like, yeah. He goes, can you nail clip a flap of skin off? And I'm like, and he's like, he holds up his hand, it's all bandaged up. So then we like enter into first aid mode here. So when you're on a homestead, it's not like you're just necessarily going to run to the hospital willy-nilly. And he had been picking up some sheet metal, cut his hand, had it all wrapped up, and there was a flap of skin that was just sort of dead and gross. And I think it's his right hand. So it's also like from his left hand, he was going to have to cut his right hand. And then and he knew he needed to get it off there. So I was like, okay, unwrap it. And I look at it and it's like all dirty. And I was like, well, first you're going to have to wash it. And so we started washing it. And then I was like, Tactical, like get me some nonstick gauze for my stuff. And Tactical couldn't find anything in my stuff. So he went down the hill to his stuff, right?
Yeah. Part of that was just, I know where my stuff is.
Yeah. Well, this is shining a light on a weakness in the hauler that I know, like I already know we have it in the kitchen, but have it in the medical supplies here too, where I know where the things are, but nobody else knows where the things are. So my thought is I start doing a more methodical labeled system that we look at, and like you and Nighthawk and everybody knows what it is.
Yeah, my system's pretty simple. I've got a cabinet that has a drawer in it. All of my extra stuff is in the drawer, and all the stuff that I'm actively using is just sitting in the bottom of the cabinet. So you just open the cabinet up, and if you need a piece of 2-inch by 2-inch gauze, there's a box of it sitting there.
Okay. So I will set up my own system that fits in the shelves I have, but everybody has to know how it works. And then I also realized that I need to resupply some things. And one of the things I don't have are scissors that can cut a flap of skin off that are sharp enough, like those little pointy scissors.
Yeah.
So I indeed had to use a sterilized nail clipper to get the flap of skin off, because for some reason the pointy scissors are not around. So I reached out to Chuck Peoples actually I was like, I need stuff. Woo. And he's like, oh yeah, I'll bring that to you. I'm like, no, I mean, like we need to talk and I need stuff. So I'll be seeing him next week at the medical class over at the Gorham Homestead that I'm going to on Saturday and Sunday. Surprise. Okay. And I can pick up stuff from him while I'm there. So Tactical is now getting his phone out and writing that down. Originally, I was scheduled to go to California. So then I moved to California and I'm going to the medical class.
Apparently, we're having a whole conversation after this live stream.
Uh-oh. Oh, because my schedule changed?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and then my next flight to California might change again. So it's more like a rolling flight to California at a really nice rate that I can move for free. So I just keep doing it. He's shaking because flights to California are like $700 or $800 a leg right now, but I got mine for $200 a leg. Okay. So yeah, that's why I do that. Anyway, I put a picture on the internet of Nighthawk's hand, and I was like, I said something like, we nailed it or whatever. I don't know what I said there. And people were like, what happened? And the funny thing about the reason that picture to me was amusing, and I didn't explain it, but I figured I'd explain it today, is that he's all wrapped up and the cut is like 3/4 of an inch long and maybe 1/4 inch wide. Like it's not a bad cut, but I had him all wrapped up because I was trying to protect it from getting like more dirt in it. So
and it's not really a convenient place.
yeah, it's
to,
right
like,
on the fold here. And so every time he moves his thumb, it opens up again. So yeah, I was just amused. I was like, how many people and how many supply kits does it take to like deal with one cut in the hauler? And the answer was 3 people, but we got it taken care of. And then he's like, well, I'm actually glad I was just going to do it myself. I'm glad I asked you to do that because I wouldn't have washed it as much or done all of the sterilization things. And I was like, just rub some dirt in it, man. That's the Gen X solution, right? Okay. Green bean palooza. What do you think of that?
I see it occasionally.
Okay. My entire kitchen is green beans right now. Is that what you mean by you see it occasionally?
Well, I walk through every now and then, and you're doing stuff with green beans. Other than that, it's not really affecting me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I scored 2 bushels of green beans, and I've thrown down the gauntlet for Dawn Gorham about who's going to have more green beans. And she threw down the gauntlet back about tomatoes, I'm pretty sure, because that's all she's been doing. But I was able to source, I did not grow these green beans. I sourced them from a friend who had extra green beans, 2 bushels. And so far we have 24 jars canned. I'll have at least, well, I'll definitely have another 12 jars, probably another 8 jars after that. So probably another 20 jars. And that gets us a lot closer to the goal of 60 jars of green beans for the winter. So that actually makes me feel happy because I've been feeling a little uneasy about the speed at which my pantry is refilling this year.
Okay.
So that's cool. But that means, so the process is like I'm canning them as fast as I can. And then as I can them, there's some that have just like, they were more ripe than they needed to be. And they're still edible, but they look a little big or they might have some brown spots on them. And I put those to the side and then we eat those fresh. So we had a mess of beans last night that were delicious.
Yeah.
But they were a little chewier than you wanted, right?
Well,
they were like pushing the
horrible.
edge of like, but they were delicious. So
I also pulled a couple of the older looking ones out to save for seed.
Oh, I put those back in. You have to go fish them out.
I've got some in the cabin.
Yeah, I saw 3 green beans by the coffee maker this morning, and I'm like, that's not where they go. And I put them back in the pile of use these quickly. So yeah, I don't can the ones that look a little like they shouldn't be canned, but we do eat them. And then we can the rest. And I actually yesterday did a live stream just canning, and it went for almost 2 hours, but just to hold myself accountable at that time of day and make sure I stayed focused on it. But also because we have a bunch of people who've taken my canning webinar and then have not canned with their pressure canner. So I'm like, well, I'll just start live canning. And then those of you who haven't like felt encouraged to body double with me. And the only challenge here is I don't have it on a schedule. So, but I got it done yesterday. And right after this live stream, in fact, I'm going to do the rest of them. So that's totally happening. I also want to make sure my coffee orders are out in time for the mail. I'll actually do coffee first and then canning. But I might start the next canning load. Yeah, that's the better way to do it. Okay. You have to kind of think about how things stack up. I already have all the beans snapped, so it'll take me almost no time to get them in the jars and into the canner. I just didn't want them canning while I was sleeping, and I went till about 11:30 last night with the green beans. Yeah. So that was super cool. The accessible bathrooms in progress. We now have a shower pan that's ready for mortar to be poured in it. We're actually doing a custom shower pan. And I think Mike's going to be by today, but I haven't heard from him. And I just told him just walk in and start working. Yeah. So if he walks in, you should close that door because it might get loud. But that's going to be super cool. And the shelf is getting built today. Like I'm building one that's more accessible with a seat and a hand thing so that if it's needed from a mobility standpoint, long-term, it's useful in that way. We got a lot of rain this week. So there was flooding in Cookeville. Did you see that? Yeah. Yeah. So like cars, so I think they said 4 inches, and it was in like a short period of time, like half an hour or an hour. And not surprisingly, in the low parts of Cookeville, cars were like up to their windows in water, which is a huge bummer for those people. Also, be careful about buying cars in Cookeville for the next little while. Yeah. You have to make sure it wasn't something that went underwater and they got it working or whatever. But right before the storm hit, and the wind was blowing the wrong direction for the storm, by which I mean the wind primarily goes one way in the holler. And when it goes the other way in the holler, that usually means damage is going to happen in the holler.
Yeah.
So I've been bemoaning that my favorite shade tree is completely gone.
Okay.
It makes me sad. I miss my tree. I liked that tree a lot. I've liked that tree since I bought the Homestead, and I thought we were trimming it, but I came back and it was gone because he couldn't trim it.
It's not completely gone.
It's gone. It's functionally gone.
It's very heavily pollarded.
It is also the killing tree, like the processing tree where we used to hang things to process on one of its limbs. So anyway, the real reason I'm sad is it shades Taj Mahal from the southeast. And that means the morning sun doesn't hit the Taj Mahal as hard, and it keeps cooler. And it also keeps my roasting shack a little cooler. But I also didn't need the branches falling on the roasting shack. So like when the wind went the wrong direction, I'm like, I'm probably glad that tree is gone, because that might have been the time that things broke off and landed on my roof. And as part of the storm, though, a bunch of rain came here.
Yep.
And right before the storm hit, you had just finished putting the overflow pipes on your dam.
Yes.
So how did that work? So he like put the overflow pipes on, and then it was like, and the heavens opened up to test it.
Yeah, well, that actually happened twice within the last week and a half, because we got a decent amount of rain the other day, and the water level in the pond came up, which gave me an idea of what was going to happen when we got heavy rains and the spring started flowing and all that kind of thing. So I was like, okay, that kind of solidifies how I want to put the overflow pipes in. So I got 3 overflow pipes put in and got it kind of filled in between them. I haven't got the end of it capped yet, but I got enough filled in between the pipes. I was like, if we get a decent amount of rain, this shouldn't wash out. And sure enough, like the next day, we got a pretty decent amount of rain, and the water level actually came up high enough that there was a little bit of water going through all 3 of the overflow pipes. I was like, got that in just in enough time.
So what would have happened if it would have rained like that without them in?
There would have been a risk of 2 areas over there washing out and creating a bunch of erosion, and then that dirt is now gone, and I would have to go find more dirt to bring in, which I'm already short. Like, I've got to bring dirt in there.
Oh, you're going to get plenty of dirt at the end of August.
I know.
Yeah.
What you don't know is I also have another load of dirt coming next week.
What?
Yes.
Oh, no.
Because I need lots of dirt.
I know, but we haven't cleaned up the trees. Where are you going to put the dirt?
I already have a spot that's not going to be in anybody's way.
I don't believe you.
Okay.
Ouch. Okay. Did you get the river bottom dirt?
Yes.
Okay. Is it for the gardens or for the pond?
It's for everywhere.
Okay. Anyway.
That's also going to be like, that's going to be one of my everyday. I'm going to get to move like a couple of 5-gallon buckets of dirt and fill in holes. And like, that's going to be I'm going to enjoy having a pile of dirt.
Do you need to rent a skid steer?
No.
Okay. We haven't bought a skid steer yet because we can rent one for less than we're using a skid steer right now, based on the skid steers I've found for purchase.
Yeah, same.
So at this point, I'm like, do you want to spend $500 on a skid steer rental? At some point, that'll stop making sense, but I don't have to maintain it if we rent it, and neither do you.
Yeah.
But I could see having a skid steer here for sure with forks.
Yeah.
For the heavy coffee.
I could see having a skid steer here for a lot of things.
Yeah. It makes sense. It'd be nice if we had somewhere to park it before we got it, though.
Yeah.
So,
working on that.
Yeah, working on that. So speaking of dumping a bunch of more eyesore shit on my property, we had hip campers in this week. Here's something interesting. So we usually get decent reviews on the hip camp, and I do have in my description that like there's trees down everywhere. So it looks a little rough right now. It looks very rough right now.
Yeah.
And they come and like we show them everything, and they're always sort of like withdrawn body language.
Yeah.
And I'm like, are they not happy? Like, I would totally refund their money if they're like, this is not what we want. We want to go to a different campground. Right.
Yeah.
And then they leave and they leave us these great reviews. So is it because I misread millennial and zennial or whatever body language? Is it just like people don't know how to communicate with people anymore?
I'll go with that.
Is that what you think it is? Like, because did you think those people liked it here?
I don't know.
I couldn't tell, and I kind of thought maybe they weren't super happy, but they weren't unhappy. I couldn't tell. Yeah, I don't know. But so that was helpful to the finances because we got $25 more.
Yeah.
Woohoo! But yeah, so the nice thing is like the campsite area is not impacted by the trees being down. But it's just like explosion everywhere. All of our firewood is here.
Yes.
So I need to put a tarp on mine.
Yeah, and I've got stuff that either needs to come inside or get tarp.
Yeah, I think that billboard tarp can just go on mine.
Yeah.
So it's ready to go. What do we got here? Hugel dirt mound limbs dirt together. Yeah, but what we want are wood chips. So I want to chip them. Did you work on the chipper?
I haven't had a chance. I've got tools up here, but didn't get a chance to actually use any of the tools yet.
Today's a good day for that. It's only going to be 85 degrees.
We'll see. Today's priority is sheep pasture.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, the sheep need new pasture today, which means fencing, which means cussing. Although the pasture you're doing isn't that bad of one.
No, it's just what I've got to do over there today is just a lot of run the weed eater down the lines and then put some posts in and run the wire. So it's all decently level-ish.
Yeah, it is decently level-ish and has some places without rock.
Yeah.
As part of the Self-Reliance Voices Learn from Legends webinar, he was really helpful in just sort of leaving me alone after 4 p.m. Right? Yeah. You were just like, oh, it's after 4. She's getting ready for a 7 o'clock webinar. Like, I'm trying to make sure there's food and maybe some of the dishes are done before the webinar starts and all of that. And that all of the tech equipment's working. Like, I'm really glad that video camera thing didn't happen in the middle of the webinar, actually. So I think it was Monday. I'm like all in on getting ready for the webinar, and all I hear queued up on our CB like thing on the phone is, "Can you come down to the pond?" That was it. Not why. And I was like, that sounds serious. So I start walking out the door and I'm like, I have to get everything. And then I'm going to tell him I'm coming so he knows I've heard it and need to get my shoes on because it sounds like I shouldn't be walking down there barefoot like I usually would. Yeah. And you know what? I'm going to grab the shotgun just in case. I don't know what about his tone was like, bring a gun to the pond. And I said, yes. And he queued up and he was like, in this one location is my rifle. Please come with the rifle. And I was like, okay, different gun. And then I came down and he had seen a snake and was not sure if it was a copperhead or whatever. And was just not trying to keep his dog from going to it.
Yeah, she's already been bit by a copperhead once. I think that was like a $250 vet visit. And it was one of those situations where it's like, I saw it and I'm not sure what it is. The dog's right there. So, of course, she wants to go over and investigate. So it's like, keep her there. And at the same time, it's like, I don't want to walk off because if I walk off, it's going to take off. If I don't walk off and I stand there, it's going to stay perfectly still because I might not see it.
It's a tiny worm hoping the giant thing doesn't touch it.
Even though I'm glaring at it.
Yeah. So I came down with his rifle and it wasn't a copperhead and it didn't get shot, but whatever. But it was just like, wow, I didn't know that I could get that much from a tone of voice to like instantly know I'm bringing a gun with me on whatever's about to go down right now.
Yeah, we've actually come to an agreement, me and the snake. I
Yeah.
know where it's living now, and so I'll walk by and see him. It's just like, what's up, bro?
So I like having snakes around that are not venomous, because your venomous snakes are less likely to be around. Plus, the snakes eat the rodents. Sometimes they eat the eggs, and then we have to have some words. But yeah, that's, what they're not doing is eating my ducks, and they're not eating, and they're keeping more rodents down. And since my best mouser is retired now, we have a bit of a rodent thing we have to work on all the time.
I actually just right before the live stream figured out how I can set a couple of traps up in the duck coop, and I'm pretty sure I'm gonna nail one.
Okay. Yeah. So as far as harvest meals this week, we decided to test smoking a meatloaf. And for that, I used ground pork sausage and beef. And then I used Worcestershire sauce, and I used garlic, cumin, mustard, egg, probably basil, because I have a whole bunch of that on. Just sort of like some aromatics that are of the lighter kind, salt and pepper. And mixed it all up and threw it in the smoker. How'd you like that one? I don't use a binder like breadcrumbs or anything, because we try to stay off the wheat, but I just mix it without that, and it's fine.
Yeah, it was good. When she says we were testing that, it might have been a test for her, but I knew it was coming. It's not like I've never smoked a meatloaf before.
That has a picture. I'm thinking like smoked a meatloaf.
Okay.
Yeah, so the reason we did that is as I was like, anything in particular you want for like food this week? And he never has any ideas. And he was like, I was gonna smoke a meatloaf, and I'm like, we'll smoke a meatloaf. So I got an idea this week. It's like one of 2 times you've ever given me an idea for what you want to eat.
Now I'm in the mood for a smoked ribeye.
Oh, yeah. I wonder how that would be.
It's really good.
Do you cook them in there or just cold smoke them?
I've actually cooked them, like, I'm trying to remember what I did. It was on that smoker that just went to the dumpster because the bottom finally fell out, and I had the ribeyes on one side, or the ribeye on one side, and a small thing of, smoldering wood chips on the other, so it was kind of cold smoked, but not cold smoked. It was enough heat to actually cook it through, and it stayed on there for like 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah, if the temperature would get down enough, I could cold smoke a bunch of ribeyes and then sear them later. Just freeze them and sear them. But we are not in that temperature range. I'm hoping we get down in time for Self-Reliance Festival, because I was planning to smoke the bacon from last Self-Reliance Festival for VIP pass holders on Saturday, when my non-pork eaters are not there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's going to be, that is the plan. Smoked meatloaf was so good, we had it twice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And guess what's for dinner tonight?
I'm fine with that.
Leftover smoked meatloaf, because I'm starting a butt today, because we have a friend coming over who I'm paying to do some wiring, plus another friend coming over. And I was like, well, I'll smoke a butt, and then after the wiring, we can like all eat, because we haven't hung out since like November. Did you know that? It's been since November.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, so it's a long time. I'm actually stoked coming out. Can't wait to see him. Have you heard like a lot of negative stuff about Harvest Right customer service? No. Has anybody on the live stream like read all of the complaints about Harvest Right customer service?
Saying much coming from me though.
AJ's here. He should have an opinion on this. Yeah, he doesn't have to. He doesn't read that sort of stuff. So if you go online and you start looking at the Harvest Right freeze dryer, you start just seeing all these horror stories. Pack Rat says yes. Has anybody here personally had a negative experience with Harvest Right? I'm just wondering. And so if you're going to answer my second question, just put like yes - customer service or CS, so we know it's not like have you heard versus have you had, right? AJ, have you had any bad experiences with Harvest Right? Just out of curiosity. I have had a heat element error for 6 months, and while AJ was here, we fired a, and I just ignored it. I was just like, I don't have time to deal with it. I've got other things that are more important. So while AJ was here before the spring workshop, we got my Harvest Right freeze dry. Like I moved it to a new location, changed the oil, like changed all the things, did bread, worked fine. I did eggs and worked fine. Did another batch of eggs, worked fine. And I started tomatoes and I got the error again. 11 people will complain to the world about a problem. People with good interactions don't talk about it. So I was like, well, crap. And then I took it apart again to inspect the connection between the heat element and the power. And it looked fine. But there was water kind of pooling around the drain port in the back. And I'm like, okay, the back of the heat elements are sitting in the water, which is probably not good. And it probably means I need to tilt it back a little bit to make sure it drains out, because the drain hole is not blocked. So that's important. So I cleaned it all up. I let it dry for days to make sure if like some water had gotten up in the electronics, it was good. And then I tried again and got the same error. And then I tried to just heat the trays and I got the same error. And so I called Harvest Right. And here's the terrible customer service I got. They answered the phone and ran me through some basic troubleshooting and believed me when I said I had already done the things I'd already done, like change the oil, that sort of thing. And then they had me try a pressure test and some other stuff. So they had a certain amount of stuff I was able to try for free. And guys, I'm out of warranty at this point on it. So it's not like a warranty thing, but that's okay. Packrat says ours is offline, but that project is sidelined. Those dirty, rotten scoundrels then upgraded me to a technician who I had to pay $45 for. Can you hear the sarcasm in my voice? I got an appointment the very next day, and they asked me to pull logs, and I sent her the logs so she could see. And those dirty, rotten scoundrels gave me something else to try, to test, to troubleshoot if it's something with the computer, if it's something that's mechanical, or if it's something else. I'm being really sarcastic here. So we're going to reroute some wires, and you're going to help me with that by Monday is the goal. Because she's like, I'll check up with you tomorrow. I'm like, yeah, but I'm not going to get it done till Monday, because I know me and I know my schedule and I know it's not going to happen till Monday. And I'm not like, oh my gosh, I have to get this back up and running. I'm running a business. I'm like, I got tomatoes in the freezer. I'd like to run through the freeze dryer because they're taking up space in the freezer. And most of those are going to be canned, but some of those I'm turning into delicious tomato snacks. So those dirty, rotten scoundrels gave me great customer service. So while I'm on with her, and yes, I paid $45. And sometimes people get really mad about paying $45. In my opinion, paying $45 when you're out of warranty for somebody to help you troubleshoot through what's going on is a completely reasonable request. So I said, so once this happens, if it doesn't resolve, like if me rerouting this doesn't make it work again, do I pay another $45? And she was like, well, if it's on a different machine from the one we start with, then that's a new ticket. That's $45. But if it's this incident, which is a ticket, then it's just $45. Oh, that terrible customer service person called me on time, 1 minute early for my call.
I would have been pissed they called me.
I get answers to, they're like, here's your email. I reply to the email with the information. They reply back within about, maybe half an hour at the most.
Yeah.
So far, my experience with Harvest Right customer service has been really good. They've been responsive. They've been polite. They've called me when they said they're going to call me. I have some things to do that I think what happens is people have unrealistic expectations about things.
Yeah.
Or they feel angry and overwhelmed because this really expensive thing they bought doesn't work and it should work.
Yeah.
I think maybe my attitude's different because I have a commercial coffee roaster and I understand that when you use a commercial piece of equipment, it breaks sometimes and you have to fix it. And the cool thing about most commercial grade things is you can fix it, as opposed to consumer grade things where it's hard to fix it. So I'll keep you guys like updated on the progress of this, but I'm really happy with their customer service. I noticed there's a new freeze drying company in Idaho, and I'm sort of interested in their product because their trays are bigger, but at the same time, like Harvest Dry's been around a really long time. So if I make it through this with good customer service, like that's how you keep your customers, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm pretty darn happy, AJ, just as an aside. So yeah. Okay. So the rabbits, did we ever get around to moving the rabbits tactical?
Finally just picked a spot. It's not the most ideal location by any means, but they are sitting on a piece of slab rock, so that's convenient.
Yep. So AJ says, if I hadn't been anything but 100% happy with Harvest Right, I wouldn't have spent another $40K. So he's starting a bone broth business.
Yeah.
And he's using their machines. K Kim says, hoping they have a big sale this holiday season. Cha-ching. They're having a sale right now, unless it ended August 1st. Also, I have an affiliate link if anybody wants it. Just hit me up for that, or you can find it in the show notes at livingfreeintennessee.com. So the rabbits are in their new home, and I think they're happier there.
I'm sure cage setup's better, and they're not up in the carport.
Yeah, so we're kind of keeping our eye on them like the next few days because it's been hot, and I haven't been giving them fodder this week, so I need to give them fodder again. Yeah. Like every time I walk up, they're like, "What do you got, lady?" Except for that one black one, who's like, "You never give me anything I want." Like he's like a dud as far as eating random snacks.
Yeah.
If you put mulberry in there, he'll eat mulberry grudgingly, but he doesn't want you watching him eat. So I think he's just not very socialized, but he won't touch a carrot. Now the other two are like, score, we got carrots. Cause I do that stereotype. Okay. You might as well feed your rabbits carrots from time to time. Oh yeah. August mega sale up to 500 off, guys, 500 off, which is pretty good. So yeah. Bridget says, I've had wonderful customer service with Harvest Right as well. You know what? My machine came with the wrong pump. So they got my order wrong. Remember that?
Vaguely.
Yeah. And then I called them and they're like, oops, we got your order wrong. You can send the pump back, or for another, like, I don't know, it was $200. It was cheap. We'll just send you the Premier pump and you can keep that other pump.
Yeah.
And I was like, 2 is 1, 1 is none. And now I have 2 pumps. So I didn't go oilless. AJ, do you go oilless? Anyway, the rabbits are stoked. We need to move the tractor rabbits to a different location on the property if I'm going to do anything with them. So
they actually need to move today anyway.
Yeah. Started the live canning, switched over to loading the dehydrator. Now I feel like I need to get the freeze dryer working. Homestead or peer pressure. That's why I do Garden 30 when I do it. And the only reason I haven't done it in the last probably 6 months or so is that time of day I've been so like mentally tired that I'm listening to music to like restart my brain, or I'm listening to something I wanted, like if I need to listen to Bear or something to keep up on what other people are doing, I'll do it then, and then I don't do a Garden 30. But I plan to do at least once a week when I'm in town on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my garden, I mean, it used to just be 30 minutes, but yeah, it was an hour 45. Nicole, Don G is looking for someone to talk about rabbits in our homesteading group on a Sunday. Don't know if you have someone slightly west of Nashville to talk about raising rabbits. I am not the right person to talk about raising rabbits, but if she could get John Willis in, he's raised a lot of rabbits, or somebody from his crew. That's what I would look for. I don't know if he's going to the Sunday things, but that guy raises the heck out of some rabbits. But there may be some other people over there. I'll have to think about it. There are a lot of people raising rabbits. Guess what is coming off the land right now?
Hopefully another patch of goldenrod.
Golden. So my hillside garden is a gnarl, as usual. And I have goldenrod coming out. And had I kept that immaculate, we wouldn't have goldenrod there.
Yeah.
Because I would have weeded it. But we've got a bunch of goldenrod there, and there's just enough for me to make a tincture like I did last year, which didn't quite last the whole year. But he uses goldenrod tincture for the pain in his back. How well does it work for you?
Really well.
It works really well. And I think that's why I thought I had enough for 10 years, and it turned out I had enough for less than a year, which means I need to make double goldenrod tincture. But also, I want the goldenrod to come back every year. So when you're tapping into herbal stuff on your property, especially the wild stuff, you're like, okay, I want to make sure that it reseeds itself, right?
Yeah.
So I looked at the plants and I'm like, here's what goldenrod looks like, your new favorite plant. Look for goldenrod other places in the holler, because if it's growing here, it's growing other places. And he found a place that's a much more convenient place for it to grow for visual happiness. And you're just keeping an eye on it to make sure it is really goldenrod, right? I haven't gone out to look at it.
Yeah, there's a plant in the pasture that looks kind of like goldenrod, and then I saw it with purple flowers, and I was like, oh, yeah,
not goldenrod. No. But goldenrod will grow in the pasture. It used to, for sure.
Yeah, and so, but then there's another patch. I was walking up, I think, to go up to the goats or something, and it's like there's a whole cluster that looks like it's goldenrod, and that should be enough to do a very large batch of tincture, reseed itself, and spread some seed somewhere else.
Yeah, so then we have to have a way to mark where that is and not weed whack there.
I'll stick a couple of wood posts around.
Yeah, whatever. Some way that we know, like, you know, because you'll accidentally do it, or I'll accidentally do it. We don't want to do that. So I like it when that happens. It's really funny because my echinacea patch like disappeared this year. But then I got a new one from the same patch down the hill of it. So we know what happened there.
Yeah.
The seeds got rained on and moved.
Probably.
Yeah. So Little Sheep's looking spiffy. Do you want to tell him why?
Little Sheep is enjoying the fact that she gets her own bowl of Timothy pellets every day.
Yeah. Why are you spoiling this sheep? Is it because we raised her from the day she was born?
There's a little of that.
Oh, confessions.
She's obviously a little bit behind everybody else just because she was like, once she got cut off from milk, she got cut off from milk, and she can't sneak one in on mom. So like she will go up and eat pellets with everybody else, and she'll get about the same amount as everybody else if she does that. But I've got to feed the dogs separately right now anyway. So when I go to put everybody to bed, like, I give the rest of the sheep pellets, I throw a bowl of food down for the dogs, and I throw a bowl of pellets down for Stormy, and she's getting probably 2 or 3 times as much as she would if she had to fight everybody else for the little bit that I throw down, because what I'm throwing down for everybody else is a snack.
Yeah, the idea with the pellets is it's sheep treats, and then they get used to us bringing sheep treats, and then when we need to actually catch them, they're trained on the sheep treats. Have you brought Creep back over there?
Not recently.
We should do another like regular round of a little handfuls where we hand feed them, because the more we do that, like, the more handleable they are, and it makes it a little bit easier. And we're like really needing to trim some hooves, like really needing to trim some hooves.
Yeah.
So, and the ladies are not so pregnant that like having them on their back isn't like, and my belly's this big.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's perfect timing. How are your peppers doing?
Most of them are doing pretty well. I've got a couple that just never really took off, but I've got the ones I have in their own individual 5-gallon containers have exploded, with the exception of one of them.
Did you get caterpillars?
Yeah. And I thought because I blocked the ducks off from a source of water that they threw a temper tantrum and hammered my peppers.
Duck rage is a thing, as Jack Spirko would say.
And then I happened to be
It's
over
goose
there.
rage, he says, but yeah.
I happened to be over there, and it was like a massive caterpillar, and so he got fed to the fishies.
Ducks will eat them too.
Yeah, and the second one that I found got fed to the ducks.
So cutting the ducks off from the peppers means that he inherited a caterpillar problem.
No, the caterpillars were what hammered the peppers to start with. I just thought it was the ducks.
No, it not having the ducks have access to your peppers means they weren't eating the caterpillars off your peppers.
Well, I think the caterpillars were there even when the ducks did have access to.
So I too got caterpillars on my tomatoes. You got the one on the end tomato, right? That you're like, there's one here somewhere.
I think so.
Yeah, I went over there and I'm like, oh, there's caterpillar damage. And I looked and I looked and I looked and I remember Tactical was like, there's a caterpillar here and I think it's up there. So I assumed he got it because I couldn't find it. But I just pick them off. If the ducks know what I'm doing, they'll follow me around and let me feed them. But this year they didn't clue in on that. So I've just been feeding them to the fish as well. But I haven't had much caterpillar impact this year compared to other years.
Agreed.
So I think that's just weather-wise, system-wise. I don't think it's anything we're doing. Maybe the plants are the plants are happier. Like the tomatoes and peppers are happier this year for sure. The squash plants have lasted longer. They haven't given out. They haven't been putting out much though.
Yeah.
Although we had a bunch of rain, so maybe I'll come out there and there'll be a giant zucchini the size of my head. Which would make me happy because that's how you make zoodles right there. I just get one of those and I make zoodles out of it. I was looking at my zoodle maker yesterday, like sitting there on top of the freeze dryer, and I'm like, the zoodle maker. I haven't needed you yet this year because I've just been slicing the squash and sauteing it.
Yeah.
We're getting towards the end of the show, guys. If there's something you want to hear about, put it in the comments. If not, we'll wrap up. But I think this is a fun one. So a community story. As I mentioned, we had wind blowing the wrong direction and lots of lightning. And I really wished my EMP shield was installed, that hopefully is getting installed tomorrow and all of those things. And, power blinking, and Tactical was staying outside through all of that like this. And I'm like, what are you looking at? He's like, I'm like, yeah, I see wind blowing trees around. He's like, no, the leaves are blowing around like fire ashes. And I was like, oh, powerful winds. And here's the thing, because we're in a holler, the wind's usually up high, but not down low. But the wind was blowing the wrong direction. And when the wind blows the wrong direction, it comes up the tube of the holler.
Yeah. Usually when we have a storm like that, leaves come off of the trees and they basically dive bomb to the ground. This was literally like leaves circling around like ashes, or like if you've ever seen a plastic bag floating around like a balloon in the wind, that's what it looked like.
Yeah. So it got done and I looked around, no trees down, because most of the trees that would have fallen down were taken down this year, which is why they were taken down, basically.
I'm really glad we got that.
And I'm glad we got it done before that storm happened. And then I hear Nighthawk, like I reached out to Nighthawk. So then I saw there was flooding in Cookeville, and his job centers out of Cookeville. He wasn't in Cookeville, but because he works like on HVAC in various places. And I'm like, hey, Nighthawk, like, check in when you get a chance. I wasn't going to say, like, hey, are you dead? Because that's what somebody hears after somebody's dead. Is a bunch of people ask him if they're dead. That'd be weird. Yeah. So he queued up. He didn't answer. And I was like, well, I'll wait. Because if he's at work, it's not like it's not super professional to just queue up on a CB radio in front of people you're helping. So he, all of a sudden, I like walk outside, I come back in, and there's a message that says, hey, Nicole. And I answered back and he didn't answer. And then I was like, well, obviously he's okay. And then he was like, yeah, I was at the other side of the holler and there was a tree down. So I think he was queuing up for us to like figure out what to do about the tree. But he came around the other way to come home because we have two directions you can go on the road. Got home, told me there was trees down and the county was already there cutting them out. And I'm like, Well, I think this warrants a 4-household, 4-wheeler trip down the holler for sure to go check out the crisis. And so we jumped on our 4-wheelers, like everybody got together and we drove like the 1.5 miles down the holler to go check it out. And as we're getting down there, I see a tractor go by with the flashy lights. And I'm like, that's not the county. And then behind it, I see a truck and I'm like, that's my neighbor Gilbert. And so I stopped and talked to him. And here's what happened. Those dirty, rotten scoundrel neighbors of ours, 4 trees were down in the holler and they chainsawed / pushed off the road. He's like, well, it's not all the way cleaned up, but you can drive through, so that we had a clear road so we could get it out. Those dirty, rotten scoundrels.
Yeah, I don't know. That's one of the mind-boggling things to me about people are like, oh, call the county. It's like, I live in a place with rednecks and chainsaws. Like, I've always lived there. It's like,
who would maintain the roads without county taxes?
Rednecks that want to leave where they're at to go somewhere else.
So we could have called the county and they would have come out, and everybody was calling the county, I'm sure, at this point. And so Gilbert just was like, hey, I'm having trouble getting to my driveway. And he didn't know only do just between his driveway, and he like did extra because he was like, oh, there's another one down. I saw there was a tree in the canyon area that had been pushed to the side too.
There's a number of them that were.
All this is to say, like, it's a really good week or two to go cut firewood along the side of the road in the holler.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but the reason I say dirty, rotten scoundrel is that like Nighthawk didn't get to use his chainsaw, which he likes to do. Yeah. So he would have been like stoked to go help, but it was already clear. It was cleared so fast. Like, I think it was 15 minutes from hearing the tree was down to getting down there. And it was already done. And I was like, well, Gilbert, I came down here to see the chaos and you made it go away. And he was just laughing. Yeah. And then I saw like other neighbors down there and we talked for a little while. So it was pretty funny.
Yeah.
But I think that was kind of the high point of my Tuesday for sure. Yeah. Like I had been having kind of a blah day on Tuesday. And like, I was like, well, this is kind of fun on the 4-wheeler.
Yeah. I usually end up down that way for one reason or another on a 4-wheeler, so it's always a nice little run down the road.
Yep. Anyway, that's the update from the holler. If you like the show and want to support the work we're doing here, you can do it in 2 ways. 1, get your coffee at hollerroast.com. 2, consider becoming a member. Our member webinar this week or this month is going to be all about herbal remedies and foraging for health. Check that out at livingfreeintennessee.com. With that, guys, go out. Make it a great week.